Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome, welcome, welcome. We are so pleased that you have found us here on Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze. I am your host, Hank Phillippi Ryan, the USA Today bestselling author of 15 going on 16 novels of suspense. My current book is The House Guest, which you can cleverly see on the door behind me. My new book coming out February 6th, I'll show this very quickly, is One Wrong Word. You can see how that sort of looks. Cool, I'm going to do that. One Wrong Word comes out February 6th about rumors and lies and gossip and the truth. And I hope you will look for that. But we are not here to talk about One Wrong Word today. We are here to talk with the fantastic Matthew Blake about his brilliant, unputdownable, amazing, twisty, unpredictable, gorgeously structured Anna O, which I absolutely loved. I mean, when they talk about a book that you can't put down, look how battered this is. I mean, I carried it around with me because I was just reading it absolutely everywhere. Matthew Blake is the author of what the Today Show calls, hey, Robin, the Today Show calls the most talked about thriller of 2024. And they said that like on January 1st. I mean, they were just saying it for the whole year on January 1st. Matthew, welcome from London.
Thank you very much. Thanks so much for having me.
You know, I want to talk to you briefly before we get into all the housekeeping stuff. You know, you're a debut author. This is your debut novel. And to have it called the most talked about thriller of 2024 is pretty amazing. How did you decide that you could write a book? I mean, it's kind of an audacious thing, isn't it? To think, I'm just going to write a book. How did you decide to do that and why?
Yeah, no, it is. It is quite an audacious thing and a sort of challenging thing. I think it was really the idea that first sort of had that light bulb moment in my mind, and turning it into a book. I've done screenwriting as well. So I always knew there was a fantastic story there, but turning it into a book was a sort of a second stage thing, I guess. So that was the more challenging thing. But so I had the plot and the twist and the idea and the sleep. And is it a movie? Is it a TV series? And then I thought, wow, I'm going to try and scale the summit and do it as a full-length book. So
yeah, I mean, we'll talk about all of those things that you brought up. Hey, Janice, talk about all of those things that you brought up. But when you sat down at your computer or your legal pad or however you do it, and you think, okay, 100,000 words to go.
Yeah.
How do you think about that?
Well, I try not to think about the sort of the whole thing. I just think about, there's a set amount to do today, and if you keep doing that, you'll sort of get to the end. So I think compartmentalizing it and doing it in bite-sized chunks is how I managed to get over the sort of fear factor, because 100,000 words seems interminable.
It does. The fear factor is very great. Did you have days, and you're just getting accolades? I hope you'll have time to look at the comments at some point about people who have read the book, who adore the book, who can't wait to read the book. Did you have days when you thought, this is kind of good, I think this will work?
I'd written enough sort of stuff that was in drawers to know that when you have that moment, it's usually a bad sign. So I've learned to embrace the struggle. I heard a great phrase the other day about dancing in the storm, which for some reason appealed to me. So I feel when it's a challenge, when you're sort of sitting down and you can feel you're sort of wrestling with material, that's probably a good sign. That means you're onto something good. When you're sort of sitting back thinking, gosh, I'm a genius, that's usually the sign that things are going on the downward slope. So it was a challenge all in a good way, and that I've now taken to learn that is a good sign.
Dancing in the storm kind of brings tears to my eyes. I think that is so empowering and so wonderful. You're talking to a person whose book is due in 5 days and who does not know the ending of it. So I'm going to be dancing in the storm as soon as we get finished with this interview. So thank you for that. I mean, that's honestly very helpful. Thank you. Let me quickly say, welcome you all to Crime Time. If you don't know about Crime Time was started about 4 years ago by a powerhouse team of Jenna Blum and Caroline Levitt at the beginning of the pandemic to keep us all reading and talking and chatting and meeting new novels and sharing our joy of reading and sharing our joy of writing and discovering new books, just as we are today with the fabulous Matthew Blake and Anna O. We have been here on Crime Time for about 3 years now, bringing you our favorite authors, and we cannot wait for you to talk to Matthew Blake, who is giving away a copy of Anna O to one lucky commenter today. So leave a question, leave a comment, leave general applause and accolades and adulation and admiration for Matthew in the comments, and you will be entered to win on the Wheel of Fun as we spin that at the end of the show. I'm going to stop talking soon. I promise you I'll let Matthew talk, but let me just read you his quick bio so you know who he is. His bio says, and Renee says, Anna O sounds wonderful. And Sharon says, I have heard so many good things about this book. Mary Garrett says, yikes, but that's how you get those surprising endings. Love the cover, says Katie. Let me ask you about this before I read your bio. Was this the first cover? And what did you think when you saw this?
Yeah, the cover's been an amazing process, actually. That was the first one that emerged. Basically, there was a designer in the UK who went slightly rogue, and before she was briefed, had just read the book, loved the book, and just went off and had an idea and then sort of presented it. And then everyone so loved it that actually not only did the UK go for it, but then very unusually the US went for the same cover with a different colored O. And then every other country around the world, it's been published in over 30 territories, have all gone with the cover. So we're going to have a sort of uniform branding, and each country is going to have a different colored O. So at some point, there's going to be a whole bookshelf of the 30 plus editions. The latest place we've sold the rights to is Mongolia. So yeah, they're all going to all have that iconic eye image, but with a different colored O.
You have to make a poster of all of them.
I do. I know. That's the next thing. But,
that would be gorgeous. That would be gorgeous. So now that you've been introduced to the cover and you know the scoop of the color of the cover, let me introduce you to Matthew Blake. After discovering that the average person spends 33 years of their life asleep, just think about that, Matthew Blake felt the pull of a story. He began extensive research into sleep-related crimes and to the mystery illness known as resignation syndrome. Research that sparked a thrilling question. If someone commits murder while sleepwalking, are they innocent or guilty? Let me just ask you that one more time. If someone commits murder while they're sleepwalking, are they innocent or guilty? And so his novel Anna O was born. Before writing fiction, Matthew worked as a researcher and speechwriter at the Palace of Westminster. He studied English at Durham University and Merton College, Oxford, and now lives in London. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Brenda says, oh, what an interesting way to do covers. And Irma says, I love the cover. I'm looking forward to reading this book. Everybody loves it. Katie says, Mongolia. That is cool. It is indeed. So Matthew, tell us what this book is about. You said it started with the idea. What was that?
Well, it started with the meeting of sort of two ideas, really. So the first one was the amazing things that people do when they sleepwalk. That was the starting point. So I came across lots of extraordinary stuff about people who get up in the middle of the night and go on sort of 30-mile drives, come home, get back into bed, wake up the next morning with absolutely no memory of what they've done during the night. And it turns out their eyes were open, but their brains were still asleep. So that I thought, wow, that's inherently interesting. So I sort of pursued that a bit further and found out lots of cases of people who committed murder while sleepwalking. And that was even more of a intriguing idea. And the justice system isn't quite sure whether to believe them or not. So in half the cases, they've been found innocent. The sleepwalking defense has been believed. And the other half, they've been found guilty of murder. So I thought there's an inherent conflict there and there's an inherent mystery, because how can you ever tell if someone was sleepwalking when they committed a murder? And actually one urologist said to me, unless you've got basically sort of electrodes on the person while they're committing the murder, it will be impossible to ever actually tell whether they were sleepwalking at the time and whether they intended to commit the act. So there's a mystery there, which as a mystery writer, I thought, wow, you've got to do something with that. And then the second bit was discovering the real life mystery illness of resignation syndrome, which is where people usually who are sort of suffering or in a state of trauma fall into a deep sleep for years on end, and simply cannot be woken up. And there's a very famous case of refugee children in Sweden who have been denied asylum, and they all fell into a deep sleep for years on end, 4, 5, 6 years. There's no organic disease in the brain, but it is literally a deep sleep, like a mythic deep sleep. And so the story of Anna O, who kills her 2 best friends while sleepwalking, then falls into a 4-year-long deep sleep, really came in that moment. It was putting those 2 real-life bits of research together. And that's how the story was born, and Anna as a character was born.
It's just so much to unpack in that. Anna O is fictional, though, right? You created Anna O.
Yes, no, I did.
You created. She felt so real to me. Anna O as a person who perhaps killed. Well, she confessed to it. She thinks she says.
The evidence yeah, that's the bit that gets her. That's why the court of public opinion have already decided that she did it. But there are little bits that the other main character, Dr. Benedict Prince, who's a forensic psychologist, who he thinks the story is a bit more complicated, and he starts investigating for himself.
So what Dr. Ben Prince, your psychologist, who is one of the main characters, is given the job of awakening Anna O to face trial for these murders. And the conundrum is she's asleep, or in whatever state she is. And if she's asleep, she's safe and free. She's in a hospital, but fine. But if she's awakened, she'll have to go on trial and maybe spend the rest of her life in prison. So the first dilemma is, does he, as a doctor who is first do no harm, does he wake her up? Is that a good thing? The resignation syndrome, let's talk about that a little bit, because you describe it as, it's almost as if a person gives up, that there's just no hope of happiness and they just collapse into themselves. Can you talk? Sharon says this must have been fascinating. I so agree. Can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, that's real.
Yeah, well, it was. I mean, that's what so intrigued me. It's because it's called a mystery illness. It's sort of the thing that's puzzled neurologists and psychologists all across the world. There's one particular neurologist called Suzanne O'Sullivan who's done a huge amount of work on this, and it was through her work that I first encountered the condition. But it's called a functional neurological disorder. It's what might have been called in the past psychosomatic. It's all about the link between the mind and the body. So sort of mental trauma exhibiting itself as physical trauma. And if you go right back through the history of psychology, you get to obviously the most famous figure in psychology, which is Freud, and his early work on hysteria, which was people, women really, in all his case studies presenting with hysterical symptoms, and he was trying to go back into their biography and figure out what might cause this. And Suzanne O'Sullivan and other people who worked on resignation syndrome have sort of applied something of a similar technique. So it's a biographical technique. They look into the patient's lives, what's brought them to that point, what's the trauma, and it's only really through understanding the person's backstory and their history that you can understand how you might begin to cure them. But the main thing is the absence of hope. So you have to find out what trauma in their past caused the absence of hope, what caused that. And if you can bring back some hope, you have a chance of bringing this person back to wakefulness again. So as a writer, as a creative person, that is just such an extraordinary thing. But it does prove that truth is always stranger than fiction. I could never have made that up.
True, that's very true. But I do think that one of the things that you so gorgeously do in Anna O, if you just joined us, we're talking about Matthew Blake's blockbuster new Anna O, is that you have Anna O, who is a victim, I suppose, of resignation syndrome, the idea that there's nothing to live for, that there's just nothing to hope for.
Yeah.
And you gorgeously thematically give that syndrome to other people too, not in as dramatic a way as being asleep, but the idea of, is my life worth living? What am I doing this for? What are my goals in life? Why am I here? So this sort of deeply philosophical thematic undercurrent to this page-turning thriller. I mean, was that a conscious did that evolve as you were writing it? That those layers?
Yeah, no, it definitely did. I mean, I was very interested, particularly in the Ben Anna relationship, so the psychologist and patient relationship, and particularly interested with Ben that you might be someone who's an expert in the mind, you can diagnose everyone else's problems, but will have huge amounts of problems of your own. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's what's so interesting with medical people or people with this great knowledge, is that they can diagnose other problems, but whether they can diagnose their own vulnerabilities and mistakes is a different question. And Ben is quite a trouble. He's got his own problems. He's divorced from his wife Clara. He's got a young daughter called Kit Kat, who he is sort of estranged from, but he's got hopes of that family unit sort of getting back together. So he's trying to cure Anna, but at the same time, really, he's also trying to cure himself, because life isn't going as he wants it to, and he needs to sort of diagnose why that's happened.
I mean, it's interesting. I was just talking to another author about one of the things that drives a good story is to ask yourself, what does this character hope for?
Yes.
And that's what makes a story be meaningful. And I think that your book, Anna O, is driven by what, did Anna really do it, and is she guilty? But also, it's driven by relationships.
Yes.
Between Ben Prince, her psychologist, and Anna O, of course, but
Yeah.
familial relationships, people's relationships with their parents and their children, medical relationships, doctor-patient, law enforcement and criminal relationships, even the government's relationship with the public. All of those relationships are populated by real people in
Yes.
this book. Talk a little bit about relationships as driving this novel.
Well, I mean, for any mystery novelist or thriller writer, there's no point having thrills and spills and mysteries and twists if you don't care about the characters, because in the end, the greatest mystery of all is other people, is the mystery inside ourselves, if you like, and our behaviors. So yeah, characters are absolute front and center of this. I mean, it starts with the Ben Anna relationship is the sort of the main axis on which the whole novel turns, but there's the whole of Anna's family and the impact that this huge case has had on them. There's Ben's relationship with his family, and then the relationship with the sort of wider world. The Anna O case has become a massive worldwide sort of true crime celebrity case, and so everyone's got an opinion on it. Everyone's got a theory and a sort of it's a novel that I hope reflects the world we're in, the world of sort of, the Netflix true crime series, of social media theories, of that whole world. And so it's it's Anna's relationship and Ben's relationship with the whole worldwide public, in a sense.
I mean, imagine that. I mean, the voyeuristic situation where everybody knows about Anna O, and everybody, there's everything that she does is fodder and will print the handsome prince, cleverly named, wake up Sleeping Beauty.
Yeah.
Cleverly done, which is marvelous. I mean, it's just great, because it is such a headline, and that's what this is also about, is headlines. Ben Prince's relationship, the psychologist's relationship with Anna O, is so realistic and so tender. The scenes where he's trying to, I mean, first of all, he can make a big name for himself in his community if he wakes her up, no matter what the result is to her. So he wants to. How did you learn what a psychologist would really do so carefully and step by step and sensitively and sensually to wake her up?
Well, that was a lot of research. I mean, that was a lot of going to these original case studies, and finding out. And what's so interesting about this is that, I mean, I was determined throughout the whole book that everything should be based on fact. So I wanted basically, all the best thrillers are, all my favorite thrillers and mysteries are. They're even scarier if they could actually happen and are absolutely real. So I was determined to get all of that right. And it's a very sort of pioneering area of medicine and treatment. So it was interesting to look at the various theories about how you might go about curing resignation syndrome. But the truth is, no one actually definitively knows. That's the thing. That's why it's a mystery. No one is. It's still this very it's sort of frontiers of psychology about quite what's causing this and quite what the solution is. But this is the current thinking about how you do it, how you restore hope. But of course, it depends. It's different for each individual patient. I think that's why it's such an interesting sort of diagnostic method, is that everyone's different. You've got to understand the patient and the personality and what is unique about that person. I think that's where the Ben-Anna relationship starts to work, because in order for Ben to be a good doctor and to treat her and cure her, he really, really has to understand her and understand every single bit about her, and not just the Anna O myth that is in the media or who other people think she is. He's got to understand who she really is.
I mean, and I want to talk about that relationship within the structure of the building, the Abbey, where
Yes.
a lot of this takes place. Talk a little bit about the Abbey, what that is, and whether that's based on reality.
Yeah, no, so it's totally based on reality. The Abbey is a sleep clinic in Harley Street. It's basically for A-listers who've got sleep problems. So whether it's sort of Hollywood movie stars or sports legends or sort of CEOs of public companies, anyone for whom having a sleep problem would be a sort of big reputational thing. They can come to Harley Street, nestled in the sort of luxurious bit of London, and get their sleep problems treated away from the paparazzi, and then go back to their glamorous lives. So it's it's based completely on Harley Street. It's an amazing street with all these sort of celebrity clinics. You can get basically anything done. It's the sort of boutique medical world in London, and I modeled it on one of the sleep clinics that exists, with all these different therapists and psychologists. And Ben he's a forensic psychologist who specializes in sleep. So the Abbey has a sort of sideline helping the police with any sort of sleep related crime, and he's the main person on that. So that's why he's recruited to be the main person on the Anna O case.
And what is it about sleep? I mean, when you were looking into sleep and you realized that 33 years of our lives is spent sleeping, how did that change your relationship with sleep in general? What do you think? Do you think of it differently now than you did when you started writing?
Oh yeah, no, totally. I do. I mean, I was looking for something sort of universal. I think some of the great thrillers, in the one that's often pointed to is Jaws. You know, people say after they watched Jaws, they never went in the water again. It was so elemental, so terrifying. And I thought, gosh, what could I find that's sort of universally terrifying? And I thought, well, there are a few things that bind us, but sleep is one of them. I mean, it connects all 8 billion of us on the planet. We all do it. And we all spend, it's really a second life. I mean, that we all spend. And so, yeah, I thought it was a great territory to explore. But I must admit, what I found out, I mean, with my own sleep, I mean, what we can do in our sleep, the way in which sort of dreams are the gateway to our unconscious, nightmares, sleep talking, night terrors. I mean, once you get started, I mean, I could have written 10 books about sleep. It's just phenomenal.
And it's not only sleep, but it's what our brains are capable of. What our brains are doing. Have we, I'm sure we could share dreams someday, and there would be so much revealed, in that. But you're so right. The idea of what is going through Anna's mind when she's lying there, not in a coma, because she's not sick. She's just, her body, her brain has just given up.
Yeah. And I mean, whenever I talk to people about the book, the thing that's happens now all the time is everyone tells me their sleep stories, and people are initially slightly reluctant. You have to but then once one person starts, the whole table starts erupting with their husband sleep talks, their sister has night terrors, they themselves sleepwalk, and it's this whole. It feels like taking off a lid, and then everyone's got a sleep story, and it's you can see it, the subject connecting with everyone about, what might I have done when I was sleepwalking, or could that night terror, that sort of panic, what if actually it had happened? What if it was real? It's there's always that moment, I think, for all of us when we wake up and we're still half asleep and just getting sort of fully conscious again, when the nightmare lingers and you just don't quite know, is it real or is it not? And I have that often when I have sort of exam dreams, and the relief when you wake up fully and you realize you don't have to do an exam today is overwhelming.
One where you didn't study, and why didn't you study? And you
Exactly.
knew about it, and you can't find the room, and why didn't you know about it? Oh, honestly, we should talk. Anyway, I wanted to do a research paper actually once. This is a digression about whether those kinds of dreams that you don't know the lines in the play, or you didn't study for the test, the ones that I have all the time, both of those, and how I got over them, but whether those are universal in other cultures. Is there the same dream in whatever?
Yeah, I mean, perhaps different context, but I think the broad framework of the anxiety dreams, yeah, no, absolutely. I think there's a real, in fact, one of the books I read was Freud's The Interpretation of Dreams, all the symbols that recur, and yeah, so I think there is, it's totally universal. I think that's what's so.
And isn't that so? I mean, that's completely fascinating, isn't it? That separate people's brains work the same way with the same stimuli and the same results when you're asleep.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely fascinating. And the other common one, which is the running dream, where you're running away from someone's chasing you and you're running and running and running. And the book has a lot of Hitchcock references, and obviously one of the absolute iconic recurring Hitchcock scenes is the man running, or him being pursued by almost that ancient idea of the Furies, or someone trying to get him, and that is straight from dreams. That's
the North by Northwest scene in the cornfields, of course, amazing.
That is the dream scene, really.
And Vertigo, of course, they're quite amazing. So let's go back. I'm going to rein myself back into talking about this book. The structure is so gorgeous in this book, with before and after and several different points of view characters. And it's complex, but it's not complicated. It's extremely easy to understand and extremely easy to follow. Was it always done with that structure, with the separate point of view structures?
Yeah, it was. And the drafts and sort of adding to it, the things that never changed were the beginning and the ending. Those were the sort of always really word for word were exactly that. So yeah, no, it was always that. I mean, the thing I most wanted to do was, having sort of studied structure and screenwriting and obviously done a bit of that, we're all so familiar with mystery structures with twists. I mean, now with box sets, Netflix, Amazon, I think the audience is more attuned to that than ever before. So writers have got to be absolutely at the top of their game to pull those twists and really get that sort of shock value. And
yes, I mean, let me just interrupt you, because that's what I do. Let me just interrupt you to say that is one of the things that I thought was so astonishingly well done in this novel, is that that your readers are smart, and that your readers are going to try to get ahead of you and predict. Yes. And your readers understand the rhythm of a story, and how a book that looks like this, about can you wake someone up who's asleep to face a murder trial, how that's going to work. And then it just doesn't. Talk a little bit about it. It doesn't work that way. I'm not telling you all anymore. Just trust me that it doesn't. How do you think about your readers when you're writing, if you do?
Oh, I definitely do. I envisage it. So the first book I ever fell in love with was The Murder of Roger Ackroyd by Agatha Christie, which is obviously one of the most famous twists in the whole of mystery fiction, 100 years ago, and it sort of changed everything, broke all the rules.
Yes.
And she did that a lot of times, and her most famous twists are that. And I remember that ending, and I remember realizing that reading could genuinely be fun. There was something almost physical about getting to that ending. And I thought, wow, I would love to do that one day. I would love to have that impact on an audience. And so that was the real goal, which is to play a game with the reader. I thought, sort of, what would Agatha Christie do now? Every plot twist has been tried, surely. Every single thing has been done. What would she do? How would she wrong foot an audience who had seen every crime drama, read every psychological thriller? And so I started with that, and that's how I sort of progress, really. So every time you think you know what's going to happen, or you get there, I want to just absolutely pull the rug out, and and think, no, 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 it's not going there. We're going somewhere else. So I hope even the most seasoned mystery fan who's read, all the books, watched all the series, will get a genuine, falling off their chair moment at the end.
Well, you got me, I have to say. There's no question about it. And the thing that's so skillful, though, is that it isn't, you're not taunting the reader. It makes complete sense. We should have figured that out. We just didn't look at it that way.
Yes.
And that's what's so lovely about it. That, that's what, as I keep saying, that's what's so seamless about it. It's not a gimmick is the word I'm looking for. It's not a gimmick. It's just the story. We just didn't realize the story. The other thing, and then we'll get to your questions. There are a million questions. One of the things I love, and I'm going to read something from the end, and it will not give anything away, but how thoughtful a writer and reader you are. And you talk about the book In Cold Blood, which was very formative to me, as well as Murder on the Orient Express. That was my Agatha Christie moment.
Oh, it's a phenomenal one, isn't it? Yeah.
And I went back and read Roger Ackroyd recently. I'll tell you why later. And it's fair. It's just completely fair. And that's the other thing that's so marvelous about it. Anyway, this is you, Matthew Blake, talking. You had someone say, psychology is the one thing true crime rarely does well. Everyone focuses on the who and the how rather than the why. A dry history of the case misses the essence of it. Only drama, art, fiction, if you like, gets to the emotional truth of things. And that's just so what this book is. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that is a sort of the sort of philosophy of the book, really. I think that it is true. That's why we're always drawn back to these stories, I think, is that you do need to fictionalize. You need to create and get into characters' minds and explore people to really get the true impact of things. And I think that's why the mystery story, the thriller, has endured for so many hundreds of years. I mean, there's a phenomenal Lee Child short non-fiction book called The Hero, in which he sort of traces why thrillers are basically the original storytelling. It's the thing when we sat around the campfire that we told each other. And I think it still serves that need. I think that's why it's still the most popular genre, and why it speaks to something very deep within us. It's overcoming struggle. It's fighting back against the forces that make life so complicated. And I think there's done well, and I think there's nothing better, really.
Yeah, I completely agree. And Lee Child himself says there's nothing better than your book. He says, Anna O is an irresistible concept, beautifully executed, certain to be one of the year's best thrillers. So that is what Lee Child says about the fabulous Anna O. I agree. It's amazing. Matthew, do you have time to take a couple of questions? We have from the readers. Okay. Chuck in the back room. Let's hear some questions from some of our commenters. So Sharon, hey Sharon, welcome. Most mystery writers have an idea for a story and know what the twist will be, do they, before they even start writing? So did you know what the twists, I mean, there's a million twists. Did you know what they all would be?
Obviously the big one was the massive end twist. That was the one that was going to, landing that was going to be crucial to the whole thing. But I did know the other ones. I think with the sort of screenwriting structure in mind, I knew that getting that right was so important. If you get that right, then you can do all the character work and do all that. So I really put a lot of thought into that structure, how those twists were going to evolve, how that was going to be satisfying for a reader. And then only once I'd done that did I start writing.
And it's difficult because it all has to fit. Anywhere you turn back into the book, it has to be there, and you really did it. Who else has a question? I see some in the somebody might have already asked this. What is the inspiration behind Anna O? So you were talking about that earlier, but there is a real Anna O.
There is, yeah. No, it's Anna O is the name of the most famous case study by Freud and his friend called Joseph Breuer, and their legendary book called Studies in Hysteria. She's probably the most famous patient in history, really. It's the thing that started psychology, and her case study and why she was having these suffering from hysteria. So I thought it was such an iconic name. It sort of played into everything I was talking about, that I took the name for the title, and obviously for the character Anna Ogilvy.
Was it always the title?
Yeah, no, right from the start. That was always, there's something about it that just spoke to me. I thought it was, it just fit it like a glove.
It really does. It really does. Sherry says, what was your journey to publishing this book? Did you find an agent easily, or did it take a while? I mean, how long ago did you start this book?
Well, it took about 4 years from the first idea to sort of getting the finished product. So it was a lot of research, a lot of planning, which I sort of did by myself. But then once that was all done and the title was done and all that sort of thing, then yeah, it all sort of took me by surprise, really. I started sending it out to agents. I got my first reply within under half an hour. So then it all just went from there. And then I got about 25 agents wanted it, and it snowballed. So yeah, but there's a lot of groundwork before that point. So that was the sort of the end point, really.
That's marvelous. Let me quickly ask you, Renee, I do want to get to that question because that's a good one, but I want to ask the opposite of that, about what was before your debut novel. What was your work before that?
Well, I was a speechwriter and researcher in the UK Parliament, so a bit like a sort of congressional staffer or something, you know, a bag carrier for politicians, writing their speeches, doing their sort of media stuff. So that was really valuable, actually. I mean, I did a English degree, so literature degree, you sort of get trained in analysis and all that sort of thing. But doing the political work was great for being a commercial writer, because it teaches you, you know, above all else, don't be boring. I mean, you've got to get people's attention. You've got to explain things clearly. And, you know, that was great training. So I'd say it really set me up to write thrillers, really. It taught me how to do it.
I had exactly the same path, studied the same thing, went into politics. You certainly learn about psychology, and you certainly learn about power, and you certainly learn how to find out things.
Yes, and I think also with politics, as I'm sure you experienced, you see people in the raw quite quickly. There's not much, because everything's happening at such a pace. It's usually slightly sort of on a threadbare budget, so you're sort of plunged in, and you get to see people in pressure cooker situations. And yeah, the insight into people's psychology and how they tick is really valuable when you're writing characters. Yeah,
totally agree. Renee, thank you for your patience. Matthew, not to take away from your debut novel, because it's only been out for a week, but what is next for you? Are you working on something else?
I am, yeah. No, so I'm doing edits on the second book. So that's about another huge topic. It's all about false memory. So it's set in Paris. It's got sort of art in it, a bit of wartime. So yeah, I'm just putting in the edits to that now. I'm hoping that'll be out in 2025. So yeah, fingers crossed.
And I love that, because false memories and dreams are so connected.
Yeah,
it's still about, you know, on your path of how our minds work and how that affects what we do.
Yeah, so it's exactly in that territory. And I thought, is there anything which I could find where there'd be more research and things than sleep? And I somehow seem to have found it in false memory. Memory is even more of a sort of treasure trove of material. So
it's a story we tell ourselves.
Yeah,
you know, and then we believe it.
Exactly.
So, and that makes it true. So, I mean, it's fascinating. I can't wait to read that. But I don't want to take away from Anna O. You're absolutely compelling and irresistible. It will keep you awake, not put you to sleep. How many people have said that? Everybody, right? Everybody. Okay, fine. Anissa says, sounds like an intriguing second book. Katie says, and this will be our last question, do you see yourself in any of the characters? And I was wondering, too, if you became Ben Prince as you were writing.
Well, yeah, I mean, certainly to a degree, because I think in order to get his voice and make it convincing, I had to do all the sort of research that he might have done, know all the things he might have done about how you'd approach this case. So yeah, no, I definitely did do that. But I'd say the thing I had most fun writing in terms of voice was Anna's diary sections, the notebook sections. They were just wonderful. They were that was probably when I was at my most sort of method writing. I was completely in it. So yeah, definitely both of those, the Ben or the Anna sections were.
Because those diaries were completely twisted. I mean, you felt Anna's brain at work, and her passion and her mind and her desire and her conflict, and the relationships she had with her parents and with her friends and with money. I mean, it's so deep and so heartfelt. Yes, absolutely. Brilliant, brilliant job. We could talk forever about this, you all, but I know Matthew you've been on tour every day what's it been like to have this joy?
Oh, amazing. Absolutely phenomenal. I mean, I just dreamed of a book that would resonate across the world. We're in 30 plus countries, and, you know, be able to talk about it and have such interest has been literally a dream come true. It's been amazing.
I love how you talk about it, a dream come true. Anna O, congratulations on this, Matthew. If you'll just stand by for 1 second, let me tell all of you in the comments, look at you. Thank you so much for your compliments about the interview. Coming up in about 15 minutes, look who we have, the Spy Coast, Tess Gerritsen, who is absolutely the queen of us all, the absolute icon, brilliant, brilliant writer. This is the first in a series about a group of retired CIA agents who find themselves in the same town in Maine, and another case comes across their desk, actually across their driveway, when a body is found in it. So we'll talk to Tess Gerritsen about the Spy Coast in about 15 minutes. Then next week at 4 p.m. on Crime Time, we will talk with Ashley Elston about First Lie Wins. I'm halfway through this, you all, and it is twisty. It is twisty. 3 really different books, I have to say. Fascinating to see how they're all riveting and all very different. But we are talking right now about Anna O by Matthew Blake. Congratulations, Matthew. Thank you so much for being here today. Let's spin the wheel of fun, and then I'll let you say goodbye. Don't forget, make me forget. Let's spin the wheel of fun. Ooh. And see. I know this is very exciting. See who is going to win Anna O.
Oh,
Diane.
There we go.
So nice. Diane, congratulations. And you will get some information about how to email our executive producer, who will email me, who will email Matthew, who will email the publisher, who will get you your copy of Anna O. Congratulations, Diane. Diane is a wonderful fan and is constantly here. So I'm very, very pleased about that. Matthew, thank you. Congratulations on everything.
Thank you so much for having me. Dan, I hope you enjoyed, and thank you to everyone for watching.
And we will see you next time, you all. Remember, until next time, it is always safe inside a book. And we'll see you next time.